So Michael's the best all-around agent I know in the company. He's done incredibly well in every facet of this business. He's the most selfless person I know. He has zero secrets. He'll help anybody. Super welcoming, super accommodating, and he just literally wants to see everybody win. That's why his team's exploding. And we get a report from, have they announced you, Michael?
Who's that? Oh, no, not yet. No.
No, okay, right. Nobody knows what we're talking about. Okay, good. So we get a report of people that are in the conversation with integrity of their personal production. And Michael last week led the pack, and he led the pack the week before that. And so what he's doing is working. He's an open book. He'll share with us whatever we ask. So my goal is I'm going to ask Michael a few open-ended questions, let him do his thing, and then you guys put questions in the chat based on what we talk about. We'll see if we have time to go over those as well. So, Michael, thanks for jumping on with us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome, Trey, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's definitely an honor because I look up to you and Steven, and I've talked to you over the years and watched you've grown, and for you to have me on this call to be able to talk to your group is definitely an honor and humbling. So I appreciate it, bud.
Thanks for being on. So for those that don't know your story, if you could just give us the brief Dun and Bradstreet, and then we'll jump into the training part.
Sure, man. I started with FFL back in 2015. It might have been the end of 14, but probably 15. And back then the largest agency was doing like $1 million a month, right? And at that point I had a group doing 200,000. And I was talking to a new agent yesterday who flew in from another group, and we were at lunch, and he was asking me a bunch of questions. And I kind of went through how difficult it was when I got into this business. Prior to getting in here, I was in the mortgage business for 12 years and ended up losing that business. I filed $1 million bankruptcy. It was finalized like 2 weeks prior to getting into the insurance business. And I had to hand over the IRS the last $50,000 that I had in my bank account. They took that, and I had to start this with nothing, and got into this. And at that point I told my wife, I said, one of us are going to have to go out and find a real job and figure things out until I can kind of learn this business and see, make this thing happen. And things were going well. I had a team doing 200 grand a month, ended up going through a lot. And in 2018, I quit. I left the business, and I had a pretty decent sized team at that point, 200 grand, but I thought the grass was greener on the other side. You hear people every day talk about leads, and the opportunity they have is so much better. And I allowed that to get into my head and walk away. And the sad part is I was starting to gain some traction and some momentum, but the grass definitely wasn't greener on the other side. I ended up coming back a year later. I left in October of 18. Sean called me in like June or July of 19, asked me how things were going. And I told him things were absolutely terrible. And he asked me, what do I want to do? And I said, I'd like to come up and talk to you. So I flew up to Connecticut, sat down with him, and ended up coming back to Family First Life. The entire team that left with me, I left them all where I was, which the ones that were left, but I came back here by myself. The great thing was, in coming back, and really I started working in October of 19, was that I knew everything to do. All the stuff that we all do as new agents, we ask a million questions. We say, like, why should we get on the phone at 8 o'clock? Why should we buy this many leads? Why do we need to go to these trainings? And rather than asking all those whys, I just started doing everything that I was supposed to do. And that really enabled me from October of 19 to January of 20 to hit vice president in just 3 months. And then 6 months after that, we hit senior vice president. And then another 6 months after that, we were able to hit executive vice president. And it only took 23 months to be able to hit board member. But the interesting part was just the first time I was here, yes, we were doing well, but it was always a lot of questions. My upline and myself, we really didn't get along at that point. And it was always just questioning everything that I was told to do, and not really understanding that everything that I was being told to do was the right thing. All I got to do was just listen, follow instructions, and move forward. I think one of the best pieces of advice that Sean could have given me when I came back was, if you want to be a good leader, be a good soldier. And I understood what that meant. It meant just to do whatever I was told to do for the team. and not ask any questions. And that was the way that I would move forward. And it really enabled us to grow very, very quickly. And when I came back in 19, it was crazy because when I came to insurance the first time, it was, a complete financial struggle. And then I allowed myself to get back in that situation again because that other company, things were so terrible. But when I came back, it was knowing what to do, not asking any questions, and just doing everything that I needed to do for the team. And it's what allowed us to grow so quickly. So that was probably a long winded question, but I hope I answered what you're looking for.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that's I was a witness to it. That's exactly what happened. And and what I appreciate is, you've always been a real open book about stuff. You'll share. You don't have any kind of scarcity mentality at all in this business. You just tell people the truth about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And we had a conversation a few weeks ago in Florida where you were telling me, I think on the slide we put, you know, the real definition of a book of business, but how you're working your book of business. Would you be willing to share that with, and any agents that have been around for, months to years? This is incredibly valuable for you. This is something that can really turn the tables tomorrow for you. So could you share that with us, Michael?
Yeah, I was out of the field for better part of a year, and obviously, if you want to grow, that you just can't do that. And so, a lot of different talks with Sean. He said, we got to get back working, and it's kind of happened by accident. It seems like something that's so simple, but I don't know why we've never done this. But I just started going through all of my previous clients that have all lapsed. That's how it like began. And I've been doing this now, 8, almost 9 years, and there were a ton of them. And we started calling. What I started figuring out was a lot of the people that lapsed, it wasn't because they didn't want it. A lot of them, circumstances changed. Maybe they lost their job for a month, maybe 2 months. Maybe the bank account changed. Something happened on a lot of these. And we just started calling. It got to be so much to where now I have 2 people, and that's all they do all day long. Because more than just my lapses, we pulled the lapses for the entire agency, and I got 9,000 lapse policies for the last 8, 9 years. And we just started calling all. It didn't matter if they lapsed 7 or 8 years ago, we still call them. I mean, last month, between that and there was a big IUL in there as well, but I wrote 73, or issue paid 73,000 last month. The month prior to that was like 25, but then the month prior to that was 42. Month prior to that was 38. Month prior to that was like 30. And all this is coming from just servicing that business that we already have on the books. And the more that I was doing it and was calling these leads, I was like, well, I don't understand why I've never even thought of this before. And all that business was just sitting there. And the amount of people that I would call, and they were actually upset with us because they said we had terrible customer service because we didn't call them and let them know that their policy lapsed. I always just assumed they were getting the letters in the mail and they just didn't want it, which was obviously a terrible assumption. Now looking back, I mean, there's a lot of business in there. And so my one biggest piece of advice to people is that when your policies are falling off the books, call them, figure out what's going on. And if they don't want it now, they'll want it in the future. But we've written just a ton of business off that. And I just keep looking every day. I'm like, I don't know why we've never done this before. It just makes a lot of sense to do that, So yeah, that's what I've been doing now the last like 5 months, and we've written a ton of business off of it.
Well, it's interesting, and I just want to reiterate what he's saying. He's calling the lapses and not takens. He's not going back churning business or replacing agents' policies. None of that. These are the ones that drop the policy. And it's funny because I think you'd mentioned to me, like, if we didn't pay our car insurance one month, that agent will call us and try to get us back on the books immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that's what these people expect.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were just mad at you, like, how come it took you so long to call me?
Mm-hmm. It's been a very eye-opening experience to realize that that's what's going on. So yeah, ton of business in there. All of us have it too, and especially if you have an agency. I mean, you go through the carriers. They don't make it as easy. I actually talked to America last week because they shut down the book of business in there where you can't see it. But I called Madison last week and I said, at least open up the lapses, canceled, free looks. Let us at least have that data because we need it. I said, I don't mind you closing up if people are doing the wrong thing and churning business. I don't, you can leave that closed, but at least open that other stuff so we have an opportunity to get those policies back on the books. So they're working on it. She thinks that she'll be able to get it done because it's that important. So
Yeah, incredibly insightful. Um, yeah, so what does the conversation look like when you call somebody like that? Michael, how do you open up what do you say?
the people that I have calling, they just call and say, hey, we're getting back to you. It looks like one or two things either happen. One, we either missed your budget or or you weren't aware of the fact that your policy is no longer enforced. There's no longer coverage. Were you aware of that? And a lot of them say either I was aware of it, something changed and I couldn't afford it, but now I'd like to get it put back in place. Or some people just say, yeah, I canceled it and we just let those go. But it's a very small percentage of those. I mean, generally speaking, something had happened. So we're just letting them know that it looks like one, the agent that met with them either missed their budget, or two, something just changed, but we just want to make them aware of the fact that they no longer have coverage. And, would you like to sit down and look at something that, better fits in your budget so we can keep it, keep it in force? And it's a very, very simple, quick conversation. They know exactly what it is. They generally remember, even if they don't remember the insurance company, they do remember they had it. And it's just a very, very easy close. So we're just going through it and helping the people out.
And so you have somebody booking these for you, a couple people, and what do they do? Just put them in your calendar, or do they try to transfer them to you right away? Or
Yeah, I'll show you like what it looks like. Like this is a typical the sharing is off. I was going to show you what my calendar looks like.
let's do that. That's a good idea. Multiple participants. Let's do that. See if that'll work for you.
There you go. So I mean, this is like a typical week of what it looks like when we're calling these things. They'll be on my calendar and I'm calling them, and then the ones that aren't there, that's okay. We'll call them back, and we do a lot of like one call closes as well. But yeah, my calendar is like pretty booked with this stuff.
I would say so.
That's like 1 week right there on what we're doing. So
Now the other focus that you've done a great deal for, really for the entire company, is just this focus on simple retirement solutions, IULs. Tell us about that and some success stories you've had and some challenges and
sure.
what you think can really help.
A big one that I just closed last month, the guy's paying $4,000 a month for an IUL. And in the past, Trey, we've always like really shied away from fully underwritten business, but a lot of this business is going through without a medical exam. I mean, some of them we can get through relatively quickly, but there's a book that I listened to, I think really helped out considerably, Money, Wealth, and Life Insurance. I don't know if you ever listened to that or read that book. That's like where I initially learned about the power of IULs. And I actually think an IUL is easier to sell than just a final expense policy. It was easier selling that guy a $4,000 a month IUL than it is selling someone a $10,000 a month final expense. The guy was like more than happy to be able to do it. And when I initially showed it to him, I showed him what $1,000 looked like. And then he said, well, what's 2,000? What's 3,000? He was like, he wanted to go higher than four. But I was like, well, why don't we do this? Because we're not going to go from nothing to try to do a $7,000 or $8,000 a month policy. But let's do this and then get things at least started. Now I have to go back and deliver that policy to him. He wants to sit down and now look at another one. But just reading that book, and then I also have the audio. You truly understand like the power of an IUL and what it can do for people. And now that we have National Life Group's comp is not as high as the rest of them, but they're so easy to work with. And once you learn how to properly structure an IUL with doing minimum death benefit, maximum cash, and all it really is showing people an illustration. There really isn't much sales to it. It either makes sense to them or it doesn't. People either want to retire or they don't. So it's not like you really have to sell anything. Like that guy that I met with, he is a business owner and he really doesn't know where to put his money. He doesn't have anything set up for retirement. And so showing him the power of it and what it could do for him, he was like, oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah, he's the one that actually took it from the initial 1,000 I showed him up to $4,000 because it just made sense to them. So learning that stuff and being on those carrier calls, but still at the same time, I mean, I saw a lot of simplified issue is doing both of them together. I think is what is so powerful. I don't think just completely jumping away from simplified and trying to do IULs is going to work. Some people try to do it, and because they don't have a consistent cash flow, it becomes an issue. So I let people know do both. Like if you're going to buy IUL leads at the same time, you should be buying final expense and mortgage protection leads, and then kind of supplement adding that in, do them both together. It's what makes sense.
Yeah, Colton had a question here. Do you do it all over the phone, or would you do Zoom to share your screen to do the illustration if you're doing IULs?
I do a lot of Zoom and show the illustration. I actually just open up National Life Group, run the illustration, and walk them through it and show it. Because if they see the numbers, it's a lot easier to see it than kind of hearing a bunch of numbers over the phone. If you're just listening to a bunch of numbers, you're going to get confused because it is a lot. So showing the screen is what makes sense to people. So I do a Zoom and show it to them.
And as an aside to that, the National Life Group illustration is set up to help you sell it.
Oh yeah.
All the other carriers could take some notes from how they do it because most people just talk too much and make it too complicated. But you just follow the first 2 pages of that illustration, it makes sense to buy it.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
Well, that is fascinating. Now, from a building perspective, I'm curious about this. How do you get new people started, Michael? Like, feels like there's 1,000 different ways to do it now. How do you keep it simple?
Yeah. Trey, before, and I'm assuming everyone used to do it this way, man. We would just, I know when I talk to people, I would tell everyone everything great about the company and why they should be here. I was almost selling the company. It was almost me talking more than them talking. And, I think one thing all of us learned was that really doesn't work. You hire a lot of the wrong people that come in here and do the wrong things. So over the last 12 months, maybe 18 months, all that's really changed. And talking to people differently, really explaining to them the entire business, telling them the schedule that we work, especially in the beginning, letting them know that there is a cost for leads and that they're going to have to spend money, and really just being completely transparent and telling everyone all the bad things that can go on and not just the good. And so from that, weeding a lot of people out and finding people that are really going to come here and willing to work. In terms of getting people started, when they come in here, we have a live dials that everyone gets on, and we get on and we dial with the agents, and we do that with just buying leads out of the CRM and getting them on the phone and showing them exactly what we do by dialing with them. So that's how we're doing it.
Well, that sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, we all do the same thing, right?
Right.
That's all we have to do.
Well, I love that because there is a tendency to overcomplicate it for sure. And I feel like, especially with all the different options, the ILC, tell us about that. That's I think a lot of people don't really realize what a gold mine that is.
Andrew's made a bunch of changes recently, which has definitely improved the quality. When I first came back in 19, I was working all Facebook final expense back then. That's definitely made a resurgence, and we do a lot of that in our agency where we'll build campaigns for people and do that. But we tell everyone that they need a lead mix, so they'll either set up, new agents will come in, they'll set up a Facebook final expense campaign, or they'll buy YouTube leads for final expense that we generate. But we also tell them at the same time, you need to buy leads out of the ILC. They're cheap, they're very inexpensive, and as a new agent, we say it all the time, you just need more swings at the bat to be able to get good. So we tell them that whatever option that they choose to buy, they also need to supplement, add in the ILC, just because they can get so many of them. And I always recommend the $2 leads, the 75-cent leads. I let them know that there really is no skill in the beginning. It's just massive amount of activity. So they need a bunch of leads so they can, make those dials and kind of go through it and understand what we do as agents when we're brand new. I think I forgot about telling people all the struggles that I went through in the beginning, and it definitely helps a lot more in sharing that. I had a brand new agent in Texas the other day, and I was explaining to him the way it was in the beginning. I'm like, man, when I came here, it was like six months straight, every day, 7 days a week, nonstop. I go, the way you've explained to your financial situation, I mean, it's pretty bad. And the only way you're going to get out of that is by doing something completely different. I said, the place that you came from, working your regular job and working 8 hours a day and taking off on Saturday and Sunday, I go, that's the thing that got you into the problem that you're in right now. So the only way to change your situation is to think differently and do something different, or your situation's going to change or going to stay exactly the same. So I just kind of let him know the way that I did it in the beginning, and it's just a massive amount of activity. I did a call earlier for someone, Trey, and I told them, I said, I'm positive that there were times in the beginning when I was working that I know for a fact that I made less than minimum wage. I'm like, I worked like 80, 90 hours and made like $1,500. And those were the times when I started, when I thought I couldn't do it, thought I was going to quit, wanted to quit, go home and tell my wife how terrible things were. And she was the one that said, it'll get better, get back out there, make it happen. But by sharing those times, I think with new agents, it really lets them know that they're not the only one that's going through that. It definitely happens to everyone. So sharing those kind of stories, when I think in the past we always, we don't want to be negative about it, but I think just being open and transparent, I think helps people understand that we all go through it. It's not just them.
Yeah. And it definitely prevents you from hiring the wrong person. I've always said that, recruiting is not selling. Like, recruiting is more like trying to talk them out of it
Yeah.
and see
Oh,
who still
yeah.
want to do it,
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you could definitely make it sound better than it actually is. And I remember when I started, Andrew had been in the business for like 6 years at that point. And the biggest mistake I made when I started was I tried to mimic Andrew's schedule.
Yeah.
Well, what he was able to do 3 days a week, I couldn't do 3 days a week. And then Sean got a hold of me and he was like, what do you tell new agents when they get started? Like, how much do they need to work? And I'm like, well, 3 days a week, because Andrew can hit Hall of Fame on 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's 7 days a week because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
And it made sense. And then I realized that actually prevented me from doing better, because if I'd have done 7 days a week, I could have learned in 6 months what took me 2 years. I had
Absolutely.
to do it 3 days a week. So
Absolutely. Greg, when I started doing telesales this year, I was like a brand new agent again. It took me like 3 months just to get back up to doing 20 grand. Man, I was on the phone trying to figure this thing out. I knew that it could be done because so many people are doing it, but I was like a brand new agent again. Man, I'm on the phone all day and I'm like, this is not as easy as everyone's making it look. And I didn't understand, because I said in the field, I had everything figured out. I had all direct mail leads, and I could go out there and write $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in a day. But then all of a sudden we transitioned over the phone. I was getting beat up this year. So when I had new agents coming in, I'm like, man, I'm just like you. I'm like, I'm trying to figure this thing out myself. I know what I did in the field, and I'm trying to translate that over the phone. And it was rough again. It took a good 3 months before I was able to crack 20. But again, we all go through it. It was a completely different skill set that I had to learn how to do. So, but again, that's hiring agents and be able to show them that it happens to everyone. It's just work, not letting it get to you, and it's your mindset that will help you overcome it and stay with it.
what do you do to keep the live dials in front of people? I mean, one of the things we've noticed is, like, we get a bunch of participation, then it falls off, then we get some participation.
It
Like,
is definitely it's an ongoing challenge. We do it. It's hard to keep people plugged into it. They don't. I think what we tried to do, and it was working for a time being, was we had everyone on one big live dials. We'd have 30, 40, 50 people on a live dials, and that's hard because people aren't getting that one-on-one. So now we're actually scaling back, where I think each manager, we're going to just go more towards run your own live dials with the small group of people that you have. That way there's more one-on-one training rather than trying to throw everyone in one big room. So we're actually trying something different now. We had a bunch of people on, but now it's like you said, it's dying off again. And I don't understand why anyone thinks that they can do it alone. It's impossible to do it alone. And for, I could never work at home. I'm like 10 minutes from my office. And even on Saturday or Sunday, if I work, I drive to work. I can't work at home. It's impossible for me to be able to do it. I got to be at work around people, or even if no one's here, I got to at least be at the office. I can't do it at home alone.
Yeah. Well, it's a universal struggle. My son, he's 13 and he watches stuff on YouTube. And there's this YouTuber that does like game theory and food theory and film theory. And I don't even know what his name is, but he shows me these things from time to time.
Yep.
And he showed me this one yesterday called Film Theory. And the topic is, you guys should look this up. It's how YouTube broke your brain. And it just talks about like on-demand content and how that's really screwed up people socially because none of us experience things at the same time. And what people really want is human interaction. That's
Yep.
why they're so depressed and anxiety ridden. And I started thinking about that. And I was like, that's like if I don't get around other people, this is really hard to do.
Yeah. Like,
Um, yeah, that was a long way. That was a long story to say I agree with it.
hey, I'm gonna
And plug
share
it at YouTube.
I'm going to share a tray for anyone that's not doing any IUL stuff. I got both the PDF book and then the audio on money, wealth, and life insurance. And honestly, listening to that book and reading that book helped me with with simplified. So it just enlightened me about the entire business and kind of understanding the thought process. How many people do we meet with or talk to, and they go, "Oh, I don't need life insurance. I make a bunch of money." When in reality, it's like the wealthiest in this world that buy the most insurance. And so, just hearing and understanding how this entire business works and who's buying insurance, and then just understanding terms like BOLI, the bank-owned life insurance, or COLI, corporate-owned life insurance. When you start understanding that, like Bank of America holds $22 billion of high cash value life insurance. When you start understanding all the stuff that book teaches you, it helps you talk to other people too. When they try to say stupid things like they don't need insurance, you understand that everyone needs it. It doesn't really matter how much money that you have, and it gives you a better understanding of the power of it. So sharing that book is huge. I listened to it. It helped me out tremendously with being able to sell IUL business.
Oh, I love it. And I think back to times, in the beginning of FFL, we talked about 4 quadrants, and IULs and annuities, that was a quadrant.
Yeah.
And there were times literally that IULs kept me in business. I had one client, I think I made like a $14,000 commission off this one client.
Yeah.
And it was a situation where anybody that would have showed up that just knew the right questions to ask and called on her current policy to show her how it was going to lapse, anybody would have written something like what I wrote her. And dude, that kept me in business for months. And it took a few months to get paid on it. But I
Mhm.
remember I got paid on it in December, and I was like, holy crap! Like, if I had a pipeline of these things, life would be a lot easier.
I agree.
And as far as annuities go, and I'm really excited about Simple Retirement Solutions and what we're doing with that. And speaking of calling your book a business, you know, Andrew used to always call us, he taught us all this. And we would call our current clients, and we were never trying to replace anything or churn anything. The biggest value we got from current clients was the fact that when we followed up and talked to them, they would tell us stuff they didn't tell us the first time because they didn't trust us.
Mhm.
So majority of Andrew Taylor's annuity business, which he always wrote a couple $1 million of annuities every year, came from annual reviews.
Yeah.
Just actually being a real agent, following up with your people, trying to service them, trying to help them out. And it's amazing what you can find.
I
So
agree with you. It makes a big difference. I have I use this database. I've used it for probably 7 years now. It's called Rate. You ever hear of Radius Bob?
mm-mm.
It's pretty powerful. Like every client, I could have a client call me, I could pull it up, and I have their entire application in there. I have my lead sheet in there. I have all of my notes in there. I can literally see anything when a client calls me. And back in like 2019 or something, I paid someone. It took them like 2 months. I said, I need you to go back through 3 years worth of closed business and print out every application. Here's all my, well, I had most of it. And I said, I need all this scanned and put into a database for me. And now every day when I close something, it always goes inside there. So I can always go back to any client. So if a client calls me, I could be driving down the road, I pull it up on my phone, and I can pull up the app, I can pull up my notes, I can pull up everything that took place in that house, and that helps out tremendously with talking to people. So I have everything. So I'll have a client and call and say, you didn't tell me. I had a guy the other day, he said, you didn't tell me that this was a cash back. And I said, I'm looking at my notes right here from 3 years ago, and it specifically says cash back. It says how much we were giving back. It's a 25-year, we're paying your house off 5 years early. So that's exactly what I told you. But because I have all my notes on every single client, I know what took place when I spoke to them. So that's been definitely something that's helped me out considerably too, is just keeping all that data.
Wow, that's a great idea. Wow. How do you keep track of all the agents you're working with?
We have I think everyone in the entire company has like go high level, right? So we have it
Yeah.
just like everyone else, everything is inside our Go High Level account, inside our contracting system. So we run it that way.
Got it. So if you're ever driving somewhere and there's 4 or 5 agents you know you need to connect with, you just open it up on the lead connector or whatever the
Yeah,
app
people
is.
that I'm working directly with, and Trey, you know, right? How big is your group now? What are you guys doing? 3 million, 4 million?
Yeah, yeah. There's
It's funny, as big as it is, you probably only talk to like 10, right?
right.
And that's what
Yeah, 10 to
I think
20.
that's what everyone doesn't understand. I tell everyone every day when I talk to them, like, it's the first 150,000 that's like the hardest, because it's all you. You're doing like a third, you know, you're doing 30, 40 grand, you're doing all the recruiting. But then when it gets bigger, like we're at a million, the goal is to be at, you know, a minimum of 2 million by the end of next year. But all that's not going to be me. Like, there's teams that are doing their own thing. I was at a Christmas party for one of our groups, and there's all these people here, more than half I didn't know, but that team is going to grow. It doesn't matter if I died today, they're going to grow and do their own thing. You know, so once it gets so big, you have some control, but a lot of it is out of your control, because it's so big, it's going to grow by itself. So the people I work closely with, obviously I know who they are. All the rest of them, I mean, you have the same thing. People that are hired every day and they don't even probably know you exist. You know, it just happens. So
Yeah, I think, well, philosophically, this is interesting because you spend all this time trying to get the team really big. And then once it gets big, all your time is devoted to keeping it small.
yeah, it is.
Like, to get it to grow again, it has to be small. So you got small groups that you're working with consistently. So
I talked
it's
to
interesting how it works.
it is. You want it to be that you want it to be so big, but now you really, and you can't really be involved with it because they're the leader of their own group. They're the ones hiring all the people. They got their own staff, you know, to be able to get to that point, I guess, is a blessing. But now I feel like, again, as big as we've done, like a million for the last 2 months now, but now I'm back to just working with a core group of people and trying to find another leader and grow new teams again. You know, the other bigger groups are all kind of doing their own thing. Obviously, if they need something, they call me and we talk. But the amount of people I talk to in a day are the managers of some of those groups, and then just a handful of directs that I have, and I'm trying to help them build and answering questions that they may have. So a lot of it's
Yeah.
changing.
Well, I mean, as far as the end of the call goes, is there anything we didn't talk about you think would be really beneficial for new agents, existing agents?
And we
Anything we missed?
covered everything, man.
I think we really did cover a lot. This has been super good. You're the first person we've had on to actually share their screen and show us stuff. That's cool.
Yeah. Someone else was interested. What are you guys doing for your contract? There was an interesting question. I was with Kevin Alexander's group earlier today, and you know, there people were talking about recruiting. They said it was difficult to be able to keep up with people. What are you guys doing anything specific on that for people that are coming in to be able to keep track of the new people you have coming in?
High level. I mean, that's it. You mean as far as like getting licensed or actually
Both in
contracted?
class and license, both.
Yeah. Well, what I do personally is I just look at the little Excel email and I send people texts and give them calls. What Steven's gotten really good at is he has an agent success coach that has specific tasks that they'll follow up with those people on a regular basis to promote different things and keep them in keep them interested.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to gravitate more toward how he's doing it. Actually, I'm going to have a staff member go out there and model one of his staff members.
Our system we put them all in, and we actually do it for the entire agency. There's about, I don't know, probably 9 different agencies that are inside there, and there's all kinds of alerts that go off. Like if someone is sitting in one particular stage for too long, it'll notify the upline, but then also notify the agent, hey, you're in the stage too long, like something needs to happen. And it also goes to the admin. So we use high level, but it's got all kinds of built-in alerts that will go off and tell us exactly what's going on. It starts from the beginning, from a person getting in class, all the way to they write their first piece of business, all the way up to they may become an active agent. But if they don't issue any business, like the first alert will go off in 10 days. It'll keep going off every 10 days and saying, hey, we've got an active agent that hasn't paid any business yet. You know, we need to figure out what's going on. And then through that contracting process, there's emails that will go out and they'll ask the agent to fill out their goals, what they're trying to achieve here at Family First Life. And then once they do that, that's stored in high level. Then that goes to the upline and says, hey, here's what the agent is looking to do. Now it's time for you to do your mentor call with that agent. And then that person, the upline, gets an email and they have a whole list of questions that they ask. And then they'll ask that, fill it all out in that store too. So what happens is when new people call in, any of the leaders can pull them up, and we know what the agent's goals were, and we know what took place during that mentor call as well. And we can utilize that information to be able to help agents.
Mm. Well, that's super powerful. You know, I've always told people, you know, the purpose of the system is to spend more time with people, not less.
Yeah.
And everything you've shared here, from clients to agents, really embodies that. It's not an excuse to get away from spending time with people. It's just being really effective with the time that you're actually spending.
Yeah.
And how valuable is it to have something to remind you of people's goals and what it is they're looking to do, and just keeping people in front of you. That's the hardest part when you're building, is keeping the ones that, just not forgetting about folks. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't want to bother you, but they're confused, they need help, and they have questions. And yeah, I'm going to copy what you're doing.
I need to
For
do more.
sure.
I need to do more of what you're doing. I need to get to your level. Trey, isn't it always true? Like the people that you hear from the most do the best, right? The quiet
Yeah.
ones, people that are quiet, they never do anything, right? I mean, when is it, unless it's fraud or something, right? But it's the ones that you hear from the most that do the best. So
Yeah. And you hit it. That's a great tip. Like, make sure you're reaching out to the people you're working with constantly, even if they're not calling you. It's it's so important to learn how to stay in front of this. And
yeah,
you're not bothering. The thing I learned, Michael, like I work for my team, so they're not bothering me. My job's there to help them. So I want that. I want the person that's going to reach out and be there consistently, and even if they're asking the same dumb stuff all the time. It's okay. I
I
did
think
that too.
one thing that I tell people, Trey, and I think it lets them understand, I go, I'm not your boss. I go, obviously at a job, your boss's job, like if you're not there, they'll figure out where you are. They're constantly talking to you, figuring out what's going on. If you're not working, they're asking you questions. I go, but here roles are reversed. I go, I actually work for you. You don't work for me. So now roles are reversed. So now the communication needs to go the other way around, because I'm here for you. So I'm not going to call you if you don't show up for work or you're not hitting your numbers. I go, but if those things aren't happening, you need to reach out to me, because now the roles are reversed. So at your job, you had a boss and they called you and figure out what you were doing, but now it's your job to be able to reach out and talk to me, because I work for you. You don't work for me.
Yeah, so powerful. Well, this has been a great one, Michael. Shoot, this has been the best call we ever did. I'm gonna go listen to this over and over.
I
We will
appreciate
get this on YouTube. Super excited to be able to revisit this. And thanks for everything. This was great. You guys make it a great week. And Michael, you're welcome back anytime. Anything me or Steven can do for you, let us know.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys.
All right, talk to you soon.
Talk to you.